My boyfriend texted from his guy's trip to Miami. I want to end this. Don't contact me. We'll work through the details when I get back. I responded with one word. Understood. Then I checked our joint credit card statement and saw charges for 2 plane tickets, a couple's spa package, and a honeymoon suite upgrade. My name is Natalie Vale. I'm 36 years old, and until that Friday night, I thought I had spent 11 years building a life with a man who was just tired, distant, and maybe too proud to admit he was unhappy. Mason and I had been together for 11 years. 8 of those years were serious enough that everyone treated us like a married couple, even though we never rushed to make it official. We had a house in the suburbs, 2 cars, decent savings, no kids by choice, and a routine that looked solid from the outside. I worked in supply chain management. Mason worked in pharmaceutical sales. Together we were comfortable. Not rich, not careless, but comfortable enough to talk about renovations, retirement, and whether we should finally replace the patio furniture. For a long time, I thought that meant we were safe. Then the small changes started. Mason became protective of his phone. He used to leave it on the kitchen counter while cooking. Then it was always face down, always in his hand, always angled away from me. I became impatient with everything I did. If I made dinner, it was too heavy. If I suggested going out, I was spending too much. If I stayed quiet, I was being cold. And whenever I asked if something was wrong, he gave me the same soft, dismissive answer. You're overthinking it, Natalie. Sometimes he smiled when he said it, like I was silly for noticing the room filling with smoke. His Miami trip was supposed to be with a few guys from college, 4 days at a beach resort. He said work had been brutal, one friend was going through a rough patch, and another had hotel points. The story sounded ordinary enough that I didn't question it. I drove him to the airport Thursday morning. He wore sunglasses even though the sky was gray, and when I leaned in, he kissed my cheek instead of my mouth. Have fun, I said. I'll try. That answer stayed with me longer than it should have. By Friday night, the house felt too quiet. I made tea I didn't drink, opened a show I didn't watch, and folded laundry just to keep my hands busy. A little after 9, my phone buzzed. Mason's name lit up the screen. For one stupid second, I thought he was checking in. Then I read the message. I've done a lot of thinking, and I want to end this. I'm not happy and haven't been for a while. Please don't contact me while I'm here. I need space to think. We'll figure out the details when I get back. I'm sorry. I read it 3 times. The words didn't change. I put the phone on the coffee table and sat there until my tea went cold. The strange part was that I didn't fall apart. I didn't scream. I didn't call him 20 times. I just felt tired. I'd spent months asking what was wrong and getting the same answer every time. Nothing. By that point, I was exhausted, not from the breakup text, but from realizing I'd ignored my own instincts for far too long. So I picked up the phone and typed back. Understood. No begging, no questions, no performance. Mason didn't respond. About an hour later, one detail came back to me. He had booked the trip on our joint credit card and said the guys would settle everything when he got back. I opened my laptop and logged into the account. The statement showed 2 plane tickets booked 3 weeks earlier, followed by a couple's massage package, a romantic waterfront dinner, and an upgrade to a honeymoon suite for 4 nights. My hands went cold as I kept scrolling. It didn't take long to realize Mason wasn't on a guy's trip at all. He was in Miami with a woman, and buried in the booking details was a name I hadn't heard from him in years. Chloe, the woman Mason had spent years insisting no longer mattered, no matter how many times her name found its way back into our conversations. I sat at the kitchen island, looking at those charges while our whole house seemed to tilt around me. I looked around the kitchen and found myself noticing details I'd normally ignore. The couch we picked together, the vacation photo still hanging on the wall, even the counter where we'd once talked about refinancing the house. Everything suddenly felt like evidence from a life Mason had already been preparing to leave. I had counted on me, reacting emotionally. He thought I would call him crying, give him a messy scene, and maybe even make myself look unstable. Instead, I documented everything. Every charge, every timestamp, and every booking detail went into a folder on my phone before I saved copies elsewhere. I saved them to my phone, my laptop, and cloud storage. Then I opened the family group chat Mason had added me to years ago. His mother used it for holiday plans. His father sent weather updates nobody asked for. His sister shared photos of her kids. His brother sent football jokes and terrible memes. They had treated me like family, which made my hand shake before I typed. Hey everyone, I know this is awkward, but I wanted you to hear this from me. Mason texted me tonight, saying he wants to end our relationship. He said he hasn't been happy for a while and asked me not to contact him. I respect his decision. However, I checked our joint credit card and discovered he is not on the trip he told me he was on. I've attached screenshots. I'm not sharing these to be vindictive. I just think you deserve to know what happened before he comes home with another version. I love all of you, and I'm sorry this is happening. I attached the screenshots and hit send. Within 30 seconds, my phone started buzzing. His father called first, then his mother. His brother texted, "What the actual hell?" His sister wrote, "Natalie, I am so sorry. Are you okay?" Then the group chat exploded. His mother said there had to be a mistake. His father demanded to know who Chloe was. His brother wanted to know why there were only 2 tickets. Mason said nothing. I pictured him in Miami, staring at his phone while his family watched his secret collapse in real time. I turned my phone face down, went upstairs, and pulled a suitcase from the closet. I barely slept that night. By morning, my phone showed 23 missed calls and more texts than I could count. Most were from Mason. "Natalie, please answer. This isn't what it looks like. My family is freaking out." "What were you thinking?" That last one almost made me laugh. I didn't open the messages. I screenshotted the call log, saved every voicemail notification, and made coffee. By mid-morning, my panic had sharpened into something colder. The first call I made wasn't to Mason. It was to a family law attorney. After leaving a detailed message, I drove to the bank and withdrew half of our joint savings. Not more, not less. I opened a personal account and left Mason's half untouched. Then I froze the joint credit card before he could put another Miami charge on it. Back in the parking lot, I sat behind the wheel holding the bank paperwork. 11 years had been reduced to screenshots, account transfers, and a legal consultation. I expected to cry, but my body seemed to know feelings could wait until I was safe. Mason's mother called while I was still sitting there. I almost ignored it. Then I answered, "Natalie?" "Yes." "Oh, sweetheart." Her voice sounded exhausted. "I'm so sorry," she said. That hurt more than anything Mason had sent because it sounded honest. "We spoke to him," she continued. "He says you humiliated him." I let out a quiet laugh. "He humiliated himself." She didn't argue. Before hanging up, she said, "He keeps talking about how you exposed him. Not once has he talked about what he did." By Sunday morning, I had decided I would not be in the house when he came back. I didn't want an airport confrontation, a driveway scene, or the sudden regret of a man who only panicked after getting caught. I packed my essentials: clothes, documents, my laptop, personal electronics, and a few things that belonged to me before Mason. I left the furniture. I left the appliances. I left anything that could create legal problems. By late afternoon, my SUV was full. My brother had been calling all day. When I finally pulled into his driveway, he came outside before I even parked. One look at the packed car told him enough. He hugged me without asking for the whole story. Later that evening, we sat on his back patio with coffee. "Do you think he'll try to fix it?" he asked. I thought about the calls, the messages, the panic. "No." "Why?" "Because he isn't fighting for me. He's fighting for the story." Mason had expected to come home and tell everyone we had grown apart. Instead, people learned what happened before he could soften it. The next morning, before his flight home, he texted again. "Natalie, please let me explain." I locked my phone. There was nothing left to explain. I'd already seen everything I needed to see. That afternoon, while Mason was flying back, I stopped by the house one final time and placed a note on the kitchen counter. "Your half of the savings remains in the joint account. The credit card has been frozen. For all future communication, contact my attorney." I wrote the lawyer's number underneath, locked the door behind me, and left. Mason came home Monday evening to an empty house. I wasn't there to see it, but based on the next wave of calls, that bothered him far more than an argument would have. For years, Mason knew exactly how I'd react. I'd always been the one willing to talk things through, give people the benefit of the doubt, and try one more time before walking away. Mason had relied on that version of me so long that he never planned for what would happen if she disappeared. The first messages were angry. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? We need to talk." Then they turned frantic. "You froze the card? You moved money? You left? Are you serious right now?" I forwarded everything to my attorney. "Tuesday morning," the attorney called back. His name was David, and he sounded calm in a way I desperately needed. "You documented the evidence, protected your portion of the assets, and avoided direct conflict," he said. "That's better than most people manage." "I don't feel like I'm managing anything." "You are. Keep forwarding the messages. If he changes his story, we need the record." I was already changing it. By Wednesday afternoon, Mason's mother called again. He's telling people you ambushed him, she said. Of course he is. He says you should have handled it privately. I leaned back in my chair. He had a private option. He could have not taken Chloe to Miami. She went quiet, then let out a tired laugh. You know, his father said almost the same thing. Mason kept saying you ruined his life, and his dad told him, no, you ruined it. She just stopped protecting you. Hearing that from his father mattered. He was a measured man, not someone who rushed to judgment. Then his mother lowered her voice. There's something else. Mason didn't meet Chloe recently. I know she's his ex. No, she said. I mean, this has been going on longer than Miami. That night, Mason's younger sister called me. I'm probably going to regret this, she said. But you deserve to know. Mason told me about Chloe months ago. He said it was just feelings, that he was confused. How many months? Maybe 6. 6 months of me asking what was wrong. 6 months of him watching me try to save a relationship he had already been stepping out of. Then she added, I don't think Miami was the first trip. My chest tightened. There were work conferences, she said, client meetings, travel weekends. I didn't know what they were at the time, but now she didn't finish. She didn't have to. The next morning, David forwarded a letter from Mason's attorney claiming I had acted retaliatorily by moving my half of the savings and freezing the joint card. David called me almost immediately. His attorney is arguing financial manipulation, he said. I actually laughed. The man who used shared money for a romantic trip with his ex-girlfriend was now claiming financial victimhood. What do we do? I asked. We respond with documentation. A few days later, Mason's sister called again. This time her voice was sharper. I found out who Chloe is now. I know who she is. No, she's been in a long-term relationship. That stopped me. How long? Almost 12 years. I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, thinking about some man who had probably been explaining away the same warning signs I had. Late nights, guarded phone, sudden distance, that uneasy feeling when someone you love is lying but you don't have proof yet. It didn't take much searching to find him online. Chloe's boyfriend had public posts with her, vacations, birthday dinners, holiday photos, a 12-year anniversary caption from a month earlier that read, "Still my favorite person." I closed the app and sat with the decision for 2 days. Tell him or stay out of it. My brother thought I should tell him. David only said, if you do, stick to the facts. So I did. I sent Chloe's boyfriend the screenshots with a short message. Hi. You don't know me, but I believe you deserve information that affects your relationship. I recently discovered that my boyfriend, Mason, traveled to Miami with Chloe. I'm sorry to be the person sending this, but I would want someone to tell me if our situations were reversed. Then I put my phone away and went for a walk. 2 days passed before he answered. Thank you, I suspected something for a while. This confirms it. That was all, but I understood exactly what those words meant. He had already felt the ground shifting under him. Now he had the receipt. 3 days later, he sent another message. He had confronted Chloe during a family dinner. Her parents were there, along with several relatives. He placed printed copies of the screenshots on the table and asked, would anyone like to explain this? Chloe cried. Her family found out. His family found out. By the end of the night, her relationship was over. That should have been the biggest fallout. It wasn't. The workplace questions started next. Mason called while I was leaving a grocery store. I usually ignored him, but he had already called 4 times in 10 minutes. Then came a text. Please answer. It's important. Curiosity got the better of me. I answered from my car. You need to tell them this isn't your fault, he said immediately. What? My company. His voice was different this time, not angry, afraid. What happened? HR opened an investigation. I sat back in the driver's seat. Mason and Chloe worked on the same regional sales team. They traveled together, shared clients, and made decisions that affected commissions. Company policy required workplace relationships to be disclosed. They had disclosed nothing. What exactly are they investigating? I asked. Our travel expenses. That answer did more than confirm the affair. It pulled months of client meetings and work conferences into a new light. How many trips were there, Mason? I didn't answer right away. It's complicated, he said. That was enough. 3 days later, his sister filled in the rest. HR had started with the undisclosed relationship, then expanded when the expense reports didn't make sense. Dinners didn't match client schedules. Hotel stays stretched beyond official event dates. Rental cars appeared on weekends with no work activity attached. What looked like an affair became something much worse for both of them. Neither of them expected it. Mason had convinced himself the investigation would end with a warning. Chloe apparently thought the company only cared about the relationship itself. They were wrong. A week later, the company made its decision. The investigation concluded that the problem wasn't just the undisclosed relationship. The company concluded that personal travel had been disguised as business activity. Whether they faced further legal consequences was still unclear, but their careers at that company were over. Mason called once after he was suspended and once after he was fired. The first time, he blamed the screenshots. The second time, he barely had the energy to blame anyone. "What am I supposed to do now?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. A month earlier, I would have tried to comfort him out of habit. That version of me was gone. "You should talk to your attorney," I said. Then I ended the call. Mediation began the following week. Since we were not married, it was mostly about shared property, the house, the joint accounts, and anything both of us had financially contributed to. There was no courtroom scene, no dramatic shouting, no final speech. Just paperwork, numbers, and two people sitting across from each other, like strangers who happened to know every corner of the same house. The house went on the market and sold faster than expected. We accepted an offer above asking. After the mortgage and fees were handled, I walked away with enough to start over. Mason got his share too. Vehicles stayed with their owners. Shared accounts were divided. No alimony, no drawn-out battle, no reason to keep speaking outside attorneys and mediation. By then, Mason's family had settled into a painful new normal. His mother still checked on me occasionally. His father sent one message saying he was sorry and hoped I found peace. His brother kept texting me about football, though neither of us mentioned Mason much. His sister stayed more neutral, which I understood. Family loyalty is complicated even when the evidence is ugly. Chloe's boyfriend moved on with his own legal process. Months later, I heard he had moved out and started over. We never spoke again, but I hoped things turned out better for him than they had for either of us. Chloe, according to Mason's sister, didn't want Mason anymore once everything collapsed. That part wasn't surprising. The relationship that had seemed worth risking everything for suddenly looked very different once there were no secrets left to hide behind. When Mason was unemployed, exposed, and staying in temporary housing, the fantasy lost its shine quickly. A few days after the separation agreement was complete, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment near downtown. It wasn't fancy, but it had good light and quiet neighbors. On the first night, I sat on the floor surrounded by boxes, eating takeout from the container because I couldn't find the plates. The apartment was quiet. For the first time in months, the quiet didn't make me uneasy. No shared passwords, no suspicious explanations, no waiting for someone to come home and lie to my face. A week later, Mason sent one final message. It was long enough that I knew he had rewritten it several times. At first, it sounded like an apology. He admitted he had made mistakes. He admitted things had gotten out of control. He admitted he should have handled it differently. Then came the familiar turn. He said I had hurt him too. He said sending the screenshots to his family was cruel. He said I could have given him a chance to explain. He said he hoped one day I understood that I had played a part in destroying everything. I read the message once. Then I deleted it. After that, I blocked his number. There was nothing left to discuss with a man who still thought exposure was worse than betrayal. I don't regret sending the screenshots. Mason was preparing to come home with a softer story, something about growing apart and needing space. His family would have believed him. Some might have blamed me for not fighting harder. Instead, they saw what he had actually done and made their own judgments. Everything that happened after that came from choices Mason and Chloe had already made. The affair, the hidden trips, the questionable expense reports, and the lies all existed long before I discovered any of it. I didn't invent any of it. I just stopped helping him hide it. Looking back, what hurts most isn't the money or even the house. It's realizing how long I spent trying to save a relationship that only one person was still fighting for. The house sold, the accounts were divided, and life moved forward. Accepting that took time, but eventually I got there. Mason wanted to end our relationship from a honeymoon suite in Miami while sitting beside the woman he chose over me. Mason wanted to walk away quietly and leave the rest of us to deal with the fallout. That didn't happen. By the time everything was over, everyone knew exactly what had happened, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't carrying the weight of his choices anymore.